Hello, my name is Ashley Januba. I'm a rising senior at Pinole Valley High School, and for my 2023 New Voices Are Rising Summit project, I will be discussing the effects of wealth on educational disparities and how they exacerbate environmental justice issues. Now, we all know that nothing in this world is equal, especially when it comes to money. You have people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg who have more money than they could possibly need, while others are struggling just to put food on the table or keep the lights on. And these disparities are growing more evident every day, especially when looking at education. According to an article by the Herchinger Report, in 2015, during the Obama administration, the Federal Education Department issued a report that showed how the funding gap between rich and poor schools grew 44% over a decade between 2001 to 2002 and 2011 to 2012. That meant that the richest 25% of school districts spent $1,500 more per student on average than the poorest 25% of school districts. This data clearly shows how poor students are at a disadvantage compared to their wealthy peers. Affluent families often have access to better resources, private tutoring, and high quality schools, giving their children an advantage when it comes to education. This perpetuates a cycle of privilege and disadvantage, widening the educational gap between the rich and the poor. Students from poor districts have to fight twice as hard to receive half the accolades and resources compared to wealthy students. Moreover, wealthy communities tend to have better funded schools with modern facilities and technology, while disadvantaged areas may suffer from inadequate resources, outdated infrastructure, and overcrowded classrooms. This disparity in funding and resources further exacerbates educational inequalities. It's also no surprise that due to the history of racism and discrimination in America, most often low income students also happen to come from Black and Brown communities. These communities are hit on two fronts, having to deal with both racial and economic barriers. This graph shows how poor Black children are more likely to attend high poverty schools compared to poor white children. It shows how there is a large gap between the number of Black children attending low income schools compared to the number of white children attending those same schools. As a rising senior and a Black woman who comes from a low income community, this topic is very dear to me because I will soon be facing the daunting task of college admissions, something that all seniors have to go through, but that once again is still not equal. I recently watched a Netflix documentary called Operation Varsity Blues. It detailed the events of the largest college admission scandal in America that took place in 2019. It exposed how wealthy business owners, lawyers, doctors, and celebrities paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to fake their children's test scores or pretend that their child was a recruited athlete to get their children into elite colleges in the United States.
We help the wealthiest families in the U.S. get their kids into school. So I've done 761 what I would call side doors. The front door means getting in on your own. So I've created this kind of side door in because my families want a guarantee.
While I had heard of this scandal before, this documentary was eye-opening for me because it showed just how far some people were willing to go. It showed just how far some people could go. I and many others around me could never possibly imagine having the means to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into a school. It's just not possible for us. But for these people, it is. They were so wrapped up in their own little worlds, they didn't care if they were stealing a spot from another student who genuinely worked hard simply because it benefited them. What disturbed me the most was how little these parents seemed to care about education. Within the documentary, they talked about how wealthy students are more likely to score well on standardized testing like the SAT and the ACT. However, even though these parents had every resource to provide for their children to allow them to be successful, they still chose to cheat. They were already rich. Their children were already set for life. However, they wanted their kids to go to these elite colleges because that's what you're supposed to do. They saw these schools as nothing more than a trophy, something they could brag about to their friends. For most low-income people, college is a necessity for them to pull themselves out of poverty and strive for a better life. However, for some of the children of these wealthy people, College is nothing more than another box to check off their list. Some of them only want to go to college for fun, which is insane and shows just how disconnected they are from the real world. It's much easier for wealthy students to get into good schools. It's easier for them to get good jobs that provide stable pay and allow them to live in wealthy communities. And as a result, low-income students are burdened by a cycle that keeps them poor and keeps them stuck in broken communities. These marginalized communities often bear the brunt of environmental issues like pollution, lack of green spaces, and exposure to toxins. These environmental challenges can have adverse effects on their health and well-being, hindering not only their ability to perform well academically, but future generations as well. So, in conclusion, the unequal distribution of wealth influences educational opportunities. And, compounded with environmental injustices, these disparities can affect the quality of education and limit the opportunities for marginalized students. Addressing these issues requires comprehensive efforts to level the playing field in education and create equitable environments for all students. It is also important we realize the role race and ethnicity can play in what students are more likely to be from low-income communities. It is our job as the future generation to recognize and tackle these injustices so our education system can be a safe and equal space for all students. Thank you.